now, we're seeing some of the fiercest fighting to date in the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Overnight, the Israeli Air Force carrying out strikes in the city of Jabalia in northern Gaza, where IDF operations are reportedly nearing completion. Meanwhile, Israeli forces are preparing for a ground invasion to the south. In fact, there are already reports they're on the ground there, and they're moving in. Roughly 2 million Gazans fled from the north to the south. We're joined right now by a NewsNation national security contributor, retired Air Force Lieutenant General Richard Newton. Good morning to you, sir. You know, we see the Associated Press and others report that Palestinians have, quote, nowhere to go as the IDF campaign does move to the south of Gaza. How true is that statement, that they have nowhere to go?
Well, good morning, Adrienne. As you reported, the Israeli Defense Forces have now moved into southern Gaza, which Israel now is throughout Gaza. There's still operations going on in the north. They're more what I would call one-off special operation missions and so forth. There are two very small strongholds of Hamas fighters in the north. But your focus and intent of your question on the south is exactly well placed. My sources tell me that Israeli Defense Forces are absolutely on the move in areas of throughout southern Gaza. And the challenge is, Adrienne, is 80% of the Gazan population, principally Palestinians, have been displaced. And as you and I talked a couple weeks or so ago, the Gazan citizens were actually moving to the south as Israel was moving into the north. Well, now Israel is on maneuvers and some of the fiercest fighting to date in the south. And so, unfortunately, the Palestinian citizens are trapped for all practical purposes. But nonetheless, Israel is following through its mission to destroy Hamas.
And with that mission, how important is it for this military to take these cities, the first largest city, of course, the capital, Gaza City, and now in the south, this is a stronghold for this terrorist regime.
It is indeed. It's also the hometown of Hamas's, their strategic leader. But it's more than just symbolic. It's key because this is now where the Hamas leadership is located. Reportedly, these were the 100+ now hostages are located in this part of Gaza. Yesterday, the Israeli Air Force conducted 200 combat airstrikes against Hamas command and control and other Hamas infrastructure, as well as some of their weapons caches and so forth. So we're going to see now the fiercest fighting to date will now be occurring over the next several days, if not weeks. It's critical, though, that I believe Israel now stays on the move if they are going to meet their objective. All the while, Adrienne, they're on what I would call a political clock. I quoted that out of the Wall Street Journal, but it's true. They've got challenges both domestically with still 100 hostages. Prime Minister Netanyahu will be meeting with those families today. There's also support certainly by the Biden administration, very strong support by the United States. But nonetheless, as the war goes on, as the offensive goes on, especially now, Adrienne, as they move into the southern part of Gaza, this fierce fighting ensues. This political clock is going to be very difficult. But nonetheless, Israel is on the move, and we're going to see the fiercest fighting to date.
You know, when you talk about a political clock, it's also a PR clock. A lot of people criticizing Israel, criticizing Netanyahu and this military. The UN, the World Health Organization, saying that this activity there in Gaza is against the rules of war. But the Israeli government has said time and time again that they're using precision techniques to avoid harming or killing civilians. Can they do both? Can they protect civilians, as they said they will do, and also destroy Hamas with this campaign?
They can do both, but it's going to be very, very difficult. And they're on what I would call that horns of dilemma of trying to minimize civilian casualties. I would remind the UN and the World Health Organization, and certainly our audience, it was Hamas that led this attack on October 7th. But now that they've used civilians as what they consider to be legitimate targets on the battlefield, and we're hearing horrific stories about using rape and sexual violence against women and civilians, it's abhorrent. But again, they're trying, Hamas and their strategic communication, their information war campaign is to try to come across as the victim. I believe Israel still very much is the victim here, and they're now trying to rid Hamas, these terrorists who've done evil things against all peoples, and certainly the hostages. It's not just Israeli hostages. There are over 29 nations who make up the hostage cohort and so forth. But nonetheless, this will be a very difficult time.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.